After replaying Mario Galaxy for a couple of challenge videos, I was ready to try another Wii classic from my childhood, Donkey Kong Country Returns. At first I was surprised to see that nobody's done a full game run of minimum bananas, but after beating the jungle and collecting well over 100, yeah, that kinda makes sense. But I'm not one to give up on a challenge just because it has a rough start. Let's make the run a little less overwhelming by looking at each level individually. If I reach a spot where a banana is required, the level is over and I'll move on to the next one. This works well because I still get to show off cool dodges and jumps in impossible levels up to the point where the bananas are unskippable. I'll be talking about every single level except for the ones exclusive to the 3DS and Switch ports since I don't have those versions. If they had nailed Returns HD like with a certain other Retro Studios game, I probably would have caved in and bought it for the extra levels, but since they didn't, I'm not spending $60 on it. I'm so sorry about that. With the rules established, let's figure out how many levels can be beat in Donkey Kong Country Returns without bananas. I think the main reason nobody's done this challenge is that the jungle is just a horrible start for it. Jungle hijinks was going okay until I got to this spot. You're supposed to platform in the background and get launched back into the foreground, but there's bananas on that route, so we can't take it. I tried to jump to the higher cliff without going back there, but it just wasn't happening. King of Kling was probably the most interesting level in this world. There's a super tight jump to make with these flowers that took me over 10 minutes since it was so easy to grab these bananas or not get enough distance. Eventually I got it and was super excited to see what else I could skip. This wall of bananas here is avoided by jumping off the Auk, and this... oh, never mind, we're screwed. There's just no way to climb up here without grabbing dozens of bananas, so let's move on to Treetop Bob. The level starts off fine, just use Diddy Kong and stand on the edges of these platforms. Right after that is this section I showed off in the intro. Obviously there isn't much we can do here. Sunset Shore is really painful. I can squeeze through most of these bananas at the start, but sadly I just couldn't get by with less than 2 after about 20 minutes of attempts. Canopy Cannons is just as impossible as you'd expect from a level where you do nothing but shoot out of cannons, and the same goes for Crazy Cart. To save time, every single minecart level is impossible for this run. I'll list the minecart levels as we get to them, but won't bother talking about them one by one since there isn't much to say. They're all auto-scrollers, and since you have next to no control, there's not much we can do to avoid bananas. The last jungle level is Platform Panic, and this one was really frustrating. I decided to use the banana juice from Cranky's shop to give myself extra health, and it was super useful for this level since there were so many enemies to jump through. I got almost the entire way through the level by damage boosting through these buzzsaws and making massive leaps over the void, but then I got to this ramp. I tried to squeeze between the bananas, but it just was not possible, unfortunately. And that's it for the jungle. I won't be talking about bosses since they aren't affected by this challenge, so we can just pretend they don't exist for this video. Not a single one of the 7 levels can be done without bananas in this world. I definitely saw why nobody's done this challenge. So far, there's next to nothing we can do in most levels. However, this challenge has some really high points, and I can't wait to share them with you guys. I'm so glad I decided to keep going. Let's look at the second most exciting world for this challenge, the beach. Poppin' planks is totally possible, and it's honestly a great bananas level to start with. There's a ton of bananas in your path, but with enough patience and precision, each and every obstacle can be overcome. There's some pretty tight jumps to make, like this part with the sharks for example, but none of it is too rage-inducing. The ending is super intense. You have to land on the very edge of these platforms in order to avoid picking up banana bunches. After completing it, my confidence in this video idea was a lot higher, and I immediately jumped into the rest of the beach levels. Sloppy Sands was going fine until we got to the tower section at the end. There's simply no way up these barrels of sand without grabbing at least one banana, proving the level impossible. Peaceful Pier is the easiest level we've looked at so far. Literally just hug the ceiling the entire time and you're good. However, I need to talk about the rocket barrel real quick. This thing is literally just a heavier version of the ship game mode in Geometry Dash, a game I've played for literally hundreds of hours over the course of my life. I wanted to mention this now because this is far from the last rocket barrel level I'll be playing, and my experience with Geometry Dash will absolutely be coming into play during the tougher ones. But for now, let's move on to Cannon Cluster. This one is completely doable save for one section. This part at the very end requires you to collect 3 bananas, and there doesn't seem to be another way around. Stormy Shore is my favorite level in the game, but sadly we can't make it very far. This climbing section has too many bananas for us to avoid, and even if we could get by, there's a ton of these sections later on that have the same issue. Blowhole Bound was really tough. These parts where the whale breaks the platforms is really tight while avoiding bananas, and I also had to make a leap of faith to skip this barrel. After that, we unfortunately run into this. I was able to dodge most of them, but I don't think it's quite possible to avoid every one, especially since there's another gap of bananas very similar to this later in the level. The last 2 levels on the beach are both possible and extremely interesting to talk about. Hell, if it weren't for these 2 levels, I don't think I would have gone through with making the rest of this video since so much of the game can't be done. Tidal Terror is up first, and here the tidal waves saved us. If you wait for the waves to crash, there's bananas in the way, they will be wiped out, making the tidal waves feel extremely dangerous and making the level possible for this run. That doesn't mean it's a free win though. This part here forces us to get rid of the bananas on the ground, but there's nowhere to hide from the tidal wave. The only option is to just barely get close enough to this button to raise the rock, and somehow this is good enough to dodge the wave too. After that is this section where we have to pound this pole to progress. It's barely possible to stand on the edge and pound it from there, and after that, the rest of the level is pretty self-explanatory. That doesn't mean it's easy though. There's still plenty that can go wrong, and jumps like these still have to be made. But after clearing the level, I moved on to Tumbling Temple. This level is... I'll just let you see for yourself. Nice. I can't wait to do this. I think Tropical Freeze is going to be even more fun. Okay. I hate that stupid one. Oh, got the hard jump. Okay, hard jump's done. Let's go. Okay, let's not mess this up. Let's not fuck it up. Okay, I think that's it. I think I did it. I think I did it. Let's go! Woo! Oh, that took forever. While it took almost an hour, that is easily among the best challenges I've ever done in a game. If you're someone that watches challenge videos and then does them for themselves, I'd highly recommend giving this a shot. With the K stage complete, the beach is finished, and 4 out of 8 levels ended up being possible. Alright, that's not too bad. Let's see what the Ruins has in store. Wonky Waterway was going fine until I got to this part. No matter how good my jump was, I just couldn't skip the barrel here, even with Diddy's help. Button Bash is easily the most surprising level in this run. Since it primarily focuses on shooting out of barrels, I was almost positive I'd get stuck somewhere. Lucky for us, there's next to no bananas in this entire level for some reason, making my job pretty easy. In Mass Blast, I got stuck trying to get out of the ship. There's no way to land on this platform without grabbing the rightmost banana, and these cannonballs don't help either. Damp Dungeon was pretty tough for the first half. These platforms are a lot smaller when the middle is blocked off, and some of these wheels have to be skipped entirely. After reaching the checkpoint, I was presented with this ramp of bananas. Even if Diddy Kong were down by the checkpoint, he still wouldn't help us gain height, proving the level impossible. Itty Bitty Biters is another really well-balanced level for this challenge. There are lots of tricky jumps to make, but there's nothing overly frustrating here, and no barrel launches to ruin it either. This is another one I'd recommend for those looking for fun levels to try themselves. Tumbling Temple is the first of only 3 Rambi-centric levels, and it's completely impossible. Despite being super powerful and satisfying to use, Rambi severely limits your mobility, and there's nothing we can do to get past these long stretches of bananas with him. I tried ditching him, but he's needed to break these blocks, so there's not much else I can do. Shifty Smashers is the final level of the Ruins, and I was convinced it would be another impossible one. The whole level is about squeezing into tight spaces, and that's a recipe for disaster when trying to avoid bananas. Much to my surprise, there were no bananas to dodge for a majority of the level until I got to this part. I couldn't jump over or walk under, but crouching and letting this wall push me allowed me to get by and finish the level. That makes 3 out of 7 levels possible in the Ruins, which is honestly 3 more than I thought I'd beat in this world. Next up is the Cave, and yeah, this is pretty bad. Rickety rails, grip and trip, and bombs away all put you in a minecart, so they're basically dead on arrival. Mole Patrol is where my Geometry Ash experience is really going to come and save me. There's a technique in the game known as straight flying, where if you press the button with enough consistency and speed, the ship will basically fly in a straight or nearly straight line. This exact same tech can be applied to the rocket barrel in returns, and various spiky rocks towards the start of the level are a perfect place to practice it. You'll need to get good at it for this part right before the checkpoint. 2 of the 3 bananas here can just barely be dodged with a straight fly, but sadly the middle one just doesn't seem possible to avoid. Even if we could, this section immediately after is a wall of bananas, and after over a half hour, I just couldn't get past. It's a shame too, since the rest of the level afterwards is honestly super simple. This is probably the level closest to being possible that I didn't do, so hopefully someone can beat it. Crowded Cavern is also a rocket barrel level, but this one I have zero hope for. There's this part with a ton of bananas, but even if we could get past it, this part later on gives us even less room to work with. The ending where the bat is shooting lasers is way more intense and fun while dodging bananas though. I'd highly recommend trying it. Jagged Jewels is the last level in the cave, and thank God it can't be done. Every one of these ledges at the start can be landed on without grabbing bananas, and I was really worried I'd have to route and execute the entire level this way. I'd be more than happy to do that if I had save states, but since I don't, I was terrified of this. So I ran through the level to find this section, and no matter what I tried, I couldn't get past it. The level is totally doable up to that point, it's just really, really hard. Not a single level was possible in the cave. I am not surprised by that at all since this world is all about auto-scrollers, but let's move on to the forest. I'm not gonna lie, our luck isn't improving much with this world. Vine Valley is impossible right at the beginning due to this required barrel launch, and Clingy Swingy is over at the start too because of this gap we can't cross without bananas. Flutter Flyaway was going okay until I got to this required barrel launch into the background. Tippin' Totems was so close to being possible but got ruined at the very end by these elephants, and Longshot Launch is just as impossible as you'd expect a barrel-based level to be. Booglevine Wonders has too many bananas to dodge on the vines, and Muncher Marathon has a line of bananas we can't pass at the start. Blast and Bounce isn't actually impossible because of the barrels launching us into bananas. It's impossible because of this tower of bananas we can't jump over. It's not all bad though. Springy Spores is a pretty fun level in this challenge. The start requires an awkward damage boost, but after that things are pretty straightforward. Just avoid any areas or platforms that have bananas and make your way to the last part. There's bananas on most of these mushrooms, but thankfully we can carefully bounce on the edges to reach the goal and finish off the forest. Only one level was possible out of 9, and that's a pretty pathetic score, no way around it. Let's hope the cliffs are a little better. Sticky Situation features a ton of these platforms sticking to the tar, and there's no way to land on them without collecting bananas. I tried to wait around for the empty platforms to spawn, but it just wasn't happening, sadly. Prehistoric Path is also a minecart level, and Wadey Way makes us get in a barrel that launches us into a banana. For Boulder Roller, I whipped out the banana juice for the first time since World 1. It was extremely useful since many places you're supposed to hide have bananas in them. I was worried about this banana bunch here, but standing on the very edge allowed me to squeeze through empty-handed. With the power of bananas and a no banana run, I finished the level and moved on to Precarious Plateau. This is the second Ramby level, and it also features a line of bananas we can't dodge, and this section at the end is the single most impossible obstacle I've seen so far. Crumble Canyon features a really tight sliding section, and I couldn't figure out how to squeeze through without grabbing at least one banana. It doesn't really matter though, since later on we have to run through some super tight corridors with no space or time to dodge any bananas. I don't think this one's happening. Tippy Shippy was another amazing level. At this point I can say that any possible level is really fun and interesting since there's just so many bananas in this game, meaning each one has some really cool stuff going on. Here, there's a lot of bananas that need to be dodged with Diddy Kong, especially towards the start. Landing on the edges of platforms, rolling under lines of bananas, you've seen all this stuff by now in the run. However, this ending is super tough. The last ship is very quickly crumbling and there's a lot of bananas on these boxes. The only way through is to land on the edges extremely quickly, even though you have no time to align yourself. After over 10 minutes of tries and only one life to spare, I finally got it. Clifftop Climb features too many required barrel launches that force bananas into our pockets, and Perilous Passage, well, enough said. That wraps up the cliffs, and 2 out of 9 levels were possible. That's not much better than the forest, but the next world is finally where our luck turns around. I am not joking, 7 out of 9 levels are possible in the factory, which is an outrageous number when you compare it to the other worlds. Why is this? Well, let's look at the 2 impossible levels first and get them out of the way real quick. Handy Hazards just has way too many barrels that launch us into bananas, and Treacherous Track is a super tight level without much room to move. Yep, that's literally all I have to say. To be honest, I'm just super excited to talk about a bunch of fun and challenging levels in a row after how little there was to say for some of these worlds. Foggy Fumes is a beautiful stage that works perfectly with this challenge. There's a ton of these fan blades with bananas in the middle to land on, which can be super tough without Diddy Kong. There's this scary looking section with bananas and enemies everywhere. There's this required barrel skip that incorporates a damage boost, something pretty rare in the challenge so far. It's just a blast and another one of the best levels to do without bananas. Slam and Steel is next, and there were a lot of tricky jumps to make here too. I was worried about the ending since it's so enclosed, but you can barely squeeze through without picking up these banana bunches if you hug the wall. This last jump is really awkward since there's not much space you can land on, and the pistons can mess with your momentum, but after that it's done. Cog Jog was possible since so many of these barrels can be skipped. Just jump on the top of the girders whenever you can and you should be good. There are some tricky jumps to make, such as this one to dodge this banana bunch, but if you've made it this far in the run, there's nothing that can stop you. This is also the first level with a hidden button to find, but I decided that we don't need to get them. While they are required to finish the world, this challenge is on a level-by-level basis, making them totally optional for us. Switcheroo is next, and this is easily one of the hardest levels in the run. Unlike most levels, this one is difficult throughout the entire stage, so let's go over each of the tricky parts. This jump at the start requires you to land on the very edge of this platform. This bunch of bananas can be very easy to grab by accident. These bananas above the tires require a super precise hover to dodge, and that's just the stuff before the last checkpoint. After the last checkpoint is a gauntlet of tough dodges. First up is this section where you have to make a super precise tire bounce into the button to survive. Thank God this is right after the checkpoint because it's probably the hardest jump in the level. Then there's this part where you have to drop onto the platform and roll into the chickens before they bounce you into the bananas above. It's not too bad on its own, but to get off the platform I had to make this really awkward jump followed by one more precise bounce to finish things off. I was really worried about this one, but I'm glad I was able to make it through eventually. Music Madness is yet another banger for the No Banana Run. I won't waste your time breaking down every banana dodge since it's mostly self-explanatory, but this part here basically requires a damage boost if you don't have Diddy Kong. This is the last level in the video I'll recommend others to try. It's honestly a blast. Not surprising considering how amazing this level is already. With the button levels complete, that just leaves 2 levels in the factory to talk about, and both of them use the rocket barrel. Liftoff Launch is a super short level that doesn't have too many bananas to dodge, but I have to say, this background is easily one of the most underrated in the game. I love how you climb so high into the sky that you can see the northern lights. Lastly for the factory is Gear Getaway, by a landslide the hardest level in this game to do without bananas. Even before the rocket barrel you have to make some tricky jumps, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. Once you get into the rocket barrel, there's this super tight squeeze at the start, and 2 more tight squeezes right before the first checkpoint. This is already about as hard as Mole Patrol was in its entirety, but what comes after the second checkpoint puts the rest of the challenge to shame. This part here is the tightest straight fly I've done in any game, even more than some of the hardest demons I've completed in Geometry Dash. It took me about a half hour to reach the 3rd checkpoint, but even after I did, I wasn't even close to finished. This final section alone took me a whopping 45 minutes, and I didn't even know if it was going to be possible. Eventually though, this happened. I ain't more than that, shit. Oh my god! Holy shit! Okay, hold on. Don't mess it up. Don't choke. I finally did it. I knew it was possible. I knew it was gonna happen. Oh my god. Ugh. Do not mess it up. Please don't die. Don't die to something stupid. Do not die to something stupid. Okay. Ugh. Come on. Just touch the barrel. Just touch the barrel. Yes! Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God that's over. Alright, back to the video. That wraps up the factory, and we managed to get an unbelievable score of 7 out of 9 levels being possible. If we ignore the beach, that's more than every other world in the game combined so far. This challenge was easily worth doing for this world alone, and I'm so happy I was able to get here first. Let's move on to the final world, the Volcano. Furious Fire has too many tight corridors for us to get through, and Roasting Rails is a minecart level. Hot Rocket is another rocket barrel stage, but this one is just way too tight for us. I tried for a good 10 minutes, but there are several places way tighter than what we saw in Gear Getaway, so I don't think this one's happening. Smoky Peak is the last rampy level, and just like the other 2, it's not possible. It's a lot closer than the other one since we can get all the way to the last checkpoint, but I just couldn't make this jump here without getting burned by the gorgeous lava. Bobbing Basalt was looking promising until I got to this sinking tower. Even if I had unlimited time, there are just way too many bananas here, making the level impossible. Moving Melters was similar. The start was fine, and then I hit a brick wall when I got here. Not much we can do, sadly. Red Rising is the last of the normal levels, and it looked like it was going to be really hard. Almost all these bananas are theoretically possible to avoid, but this barrel section at the very end puts the nail in the coffin for it. I said bosses don't count for this video, but Tiki Tong Terror is the one exception since it has a flying section similar to Liftoff Launch at the start. Alright, how's it look? Very, very bad. Maybe if these hot air balloons weren't here, this could be done, but with them, I just don't think we have enough mobility to maneuver around, meaning that not even the boss of the world is possible. There's still the 5 monkey trial to look at, which is notable for being the only level in the entire game without a single banana in it. I thought I'd need banana juice to damage boost, but there's literally nothing to dodge. That makes 1 out of 8 levels possible in the Volcano, 1 out of 9 if you count the boss. That just leaves the Golden Temple as our grand finale, and much like my last challenge run, it's super anticlimactic. There's just way too many bananas here, and this blueberry section specifically is definitely not happening. And since I don't have the levels exclusive to the 3DS and HD version, that wraps up the run. In total, not including bosses, 17 out of the 64 levels are possible without collecting a single banana. If you do include the bosses, the number is 24 out of 72. That may not be a high number, but I'm still really happy with this video overall. Easily my favorite one I've made so far. If you liked it, please leave a like and comment so YouTube recommends it to more people. If I get over 10,000 views, I'll make a sequel going over Tropical Freeze, so do what you can to make it happen if you want to see it. Bye for now, hope to see you in the next one.